You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 98, Deep Dive into the World of Darkness, Malkavian. Today we take a deep dive into the vampire clan, Malkavian. We discuss the Malkavians and propose looking at them from a different perspective. We also go deep into mental illness as we look into improving gameplay for the clan as a whole. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, I don't have anything clever to say, but he's here. His back tried to assassinate him earlier this week. Jared.
You should have been like, this will be our first podcast in a horizontal position.
Jared looks like I'm sitting here giving him a therapy session as he's kind of laying on the table a la Sigmund Freud, where I'm like, and tell me about your mother. He's like,
we're not going to talk about that. Yeah, no. So for our listeners who don't know, I spent 8 years teaching violent youth offenders, and part of that job was sometimes dragging them to the ground. And after 8 years, you get a back that revolts. And this just happened to me yesterday morning. I was literally getting ready to go to work. And it was funny because it was the last day before I go on vacation. And so I'm looking at one of my bosses, and I'm like, I'm feeling real sick today. Cough, cough. He's like, man, you should really get that checked out. When I called him in the morning, and I was like, so, you know how...
Yeah, I was joking about being sick. Well, guess what? I threw my back out.
And I literally can't get out of bed. And he's like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, no, this is real. And he's like, yeah, wink, wink, it's real. I'm like, no, this is actually a thing.
It's a problem.
Like I'm in a lot of pain. So yeah, that's always fun because shit happens in the hood.
Yeah, it does.
So what is our topic today?
So today we're going to do a deep dive into the world of darkness, and we're going to talk about specifically a vampire clan in particular, the Malkavians. And I know that you want to talk about them in regards to the fact that if you know nothing about vampires, the Malkavians are the crazy ones. They're afflicted with a mental illness. One of your key things when you create the character is that you are creating them with, I believe you have to take a derangement, right?
You have to, character creation.
And like those range from like schizophrenia, multiple personalities, things like that. And the Malkavians, you have to have one to start the game. And so, again, this is something that I guess is sort of near and dear to your heart. It's mental illness. So we wanted to talk and do a deep dive on the Malkavians.
Yeah, and I'm happy we're finally going to do this topic. So for the listeners who don't know, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. So we're not talking. There's a lot of people out there that say, I have OCD, and what they have is, they're just very cleanly. They're very
or you have a very particular attention to detail.
Yeah. I've been diagnosed since I was, I think 17, 18.
It was right around the end of high school.
Yeah, it was right around the end of high school. I got diagnosed by one psychologist. Literally looked at him. I remember sitting in the office and being like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And that was the end of the session. And then, really I ended up going to another one, and they were much better at delivering that news. And that's when I learned. So now I take, 2 medications a day, morning and night, and I do really great. I mean, I have a steady job. I've got a wife. I take out my trash. I do my taxes. And it took about a year and a half of therapy to finally address what the core was. And then symptoms really very much subsided after that. Once you get to the nitty gritty, what happened to cause it, you address the wound. And then the medication is a big help. It took, I don't know, at least a year and a half to get that dialed in. Different levels of doses. Thank you. And now I do really, really well. So the thing about the Malkavian that you know, so this topic is very near and dear to my heart. I'm someone who struggles with it. I'm very open about it with my friends, with my family, with people I know at work. I very much am open with it because there's a quote from Marianne Williamson that says, you know, essentially, because I can't verbatim it off the top of my head, when you let your light shine, you automatically give permission to others to do the same, and kind of showing that people with mental illness, you know, we can be functioning, you know, highly effective members of the workforce. You know, when things are down, you know, with us, you know, when our illness is prevailing, we can still work through it, and we can still be functional members of the society. Some of the diseases are much more difficult to handle than mine. I mean, mine, your biggest threat is I'm gonna, you know, clean your office and organize your pens. You're gonna come back and your office is gonna be. But you know, a lot of people have more difficult illnesses to deal with. You know, honestly, one of my coworkers let me know that he had struggled or still struggles with schizophrenia. And, you know, he and I, when I was down in Georgia, very much talked a lot about what it's like to be a person with mental illness in the workplace. And, you know, he's doing great. I mean, they dialed in his meds and he's doing really, really well. Just got promoted again, you know, and I was super proud of him. He called me. He's like, oh my God. So if I get off on those tangents, now people know why. But Malkavian, the biggest thing that I'm going to start off is with the negative of portrayal. Really, I have done LARP for years. I've done tabletop where people have played Malkavian. I have seen all sorts of iterations of mental illness or of Malkavian derangement. And I can honestly tell you about 90%, I'd say 9 out of every 10, heck, I would say 9.5 out of every 10 portrayals of Malkavian is I'm a jester and I like to make funny jokes and do pranks. I'm a clown.
Well, I think that when you think about the Malkavian, how a lot of people they portray them as the Kender character.
They do.
They do. I mean, it's very much that, you know, I'm goofy and I'm kind of out here and I'm a bit loopy and I'm weird and, you know, that's that.
That's that. And that's as far as they go. And even if you know, as a storyteller, I've asked people, you know, or as an AST, been like, let me see your sheet, and their derangement's like megalomania.
You're stealing everything. You're stealing like pens off of countertops because you think they're going to help you.
Well, like they're portraying this clownish character, and megalomania is a
Wait, am I thinking the wrong thing?
You're thinking of kleptomania.
Kleptomania. That's
God, we should have had Allie on this podcast.
Yeah,
she would have just been like, kaboom, knowledge.
See, I don't know him as well as some others, but
well, you know, I know a lot. My wife's a therapist. I was with her all through grad school, helping her study for stuff, and I'm in that world. I read a lot about it because I advocate for it in the public. You know, so
but
megalomania is the cognitive disassociation with I want to take over the world. That's megalomania. It's literally a belief. So some classic, what people would call megalomaniacs, Adolf Hitler, Stalin, people who, whether or not they actually had those diseases or those illnesses, I highly doubt, because I think Hitler was the devil. Like, literally, I think he was a form of the devil come to earth. Call that religious context or whatever. I really do. But
what you're saying is the actions portrayed and the ambition to continue growing an empire seems to
fits with megalomania. Shit, we really should add Allie on this podcast. But and I'm looking at this character or this player, and he's playing Fruit Loops. He's got a jester hat on, and literally like one he'd bought at a Ren fair or something like that, or online, or
when you would expect the character to be much more evil and much more maniacal in terms of
even if they're not evil, because like if you look at some of the okay, it never gets away from evil, my examples of megalomania, but like you look at cult leaders and stuff like that. See, still evil.
Well, so okay, again, maybe they don't perceive their actions necessarily as
exactly.
evil.
They guise it under good.
But from an outsider perspective, the likelihood that you would perceive their actions to not be nefarious or evil would probably be
because in the end they're trying to take over the world.
In the end, they're trying to take over the world, which means again, they're going to throw people under the bus, literally, to take over the world.
Yeah, they will do anything to obtain power.
Yes.
And this person's running around like I'm not going to mince words. They're running around like a jackass, being like, "I'm gonna de-pants this person." Like, dude, you're not Beavis and Butthead. You're a megalomaniac. You have and then they'll sit and they'll try to justify, and that's what that person did with me. They attempted to justify the action, and I'm like, no. Now, granted, I'm a little bit more strict. I think a lot of storytellers when it comes to the portrayal of mental illness.
Again, but it's not that you're portraying the mental. Again, when you think about the Malkavian, that is kind of like the go-to prescribed thought of what the character is. The character has no rational bounds within them that tie them to reality. That they are a very out there, kind of eccentric person. And like their mental illness is sort of like second to that. Like it's because they're eccentric that they have this mental illness.
Right, and it doesn't work that way. It's mental illness is something that, God, like you don't even know you have it.
Like actually, if you were to portray that Malkavian correctly in terms of being a megalomaniac, having your Malkavian act very much like a sociopath would be more accurate, in terms of a portrayal, being very cool and calculated,
and not giving a fuck about anyone,
and not giving a fuck, but not caring about anyone. Like that would actually portray the mental illness they possess much.
Well, I think what that person was attempting to show, or the more, I guess if I had to. We should have had Allie. If I was going to look at them and say, based off of my limited knowledge, okay, I'm not a doctor, I'm not even a therapist, but mania, the bipolar, but with a mania, you can have, I think, mania on your own.
Yeah.
Where it's rapid thoughts. The thoughts are often not. The thoughts are not often make a lot of sense. For example, one example of mania is this is a classic case. You can actually look it up. Was one guy who walked around and literally didn't walk around, drove around and just started busting up people's mailboxes with baseball bats.
Wasn't it like I'm pretty sure, because there's hypermania, right? Which is that
all I know of is mania. I don't know about anything about a hypermania.
Which I think is like it is unto that, which is mania, which is the it ebbs and flows. So there's times when they seem normal,
right?
And then then there are times when it's like it's go time and like shit's going on, like people busting up mailboxes.
Exactly, where it's they have these they get something in their head and they can't get rid of it and they keep going and they go at such a pace that it's very frightening for a lot of people.
Which is opposite to the bipolar version of that, which is that you have the real highs and then you have real lows.
Yes, and bipolar may have mania or mania parts to it. Where they're manic at some phases, manic depressive, but I mean when they hit those lows, it's like, you have to put them on suicide watch, and it's really difficult for them. So when you have a character, the great thing about going into the Malkavian is it opens up a larger conversation about portrayal of mental illness in your games. Are you yourself as a storyteller, whenever somebody is demonstrating or you give them a mental illness, are they playing a jester? Are you portraying your mental illness NPCs as a jester? He's crazy and kind of kooky. There's a difference between mental illness and kooky people. Trust me, you can have kooky freaking people. I'm a kooky person. But
you can have people who are goofballs,
yeah,
but they're not mentally ill. They're just goofy people. They act goofy. They like to do that for whatever reason. Their environment that they brought up in. That's how their personality formed, and they're just kind of a goofy type of person. And so yes, you can have the character again, and the two are not mutually exclusive.
They're not.
So I don't want to say that you can't act like the goofy Malkavian and also be like maniacally evil trying to take over the world. Like it fits in both aspects. But if all you're going to ask your players in character development, okay, what derangement they're going to take,
right?
Okay, and with that derangement, are you going to how are you going to play it? This is one of those things where like it's stretch, work it out, flesh out the character a little bit better. It's less about like how did you get that derangement? I don't care. Okay, you might care.
Well, in the Malkavians thing, how did you get that derangement? I was embraced.
Yes, but it's less about the backstory to it, and more about the how are you going to portray it and act it out, because you want to stress upon your players. And this is true for not just Malkavians and stuff in general, but this is a general thing. If you're going to take a flaw, if you're going to take a some sort of like detriment to your character, you better enact that playing in character.
Well, it's just like, for example, by the way, you're hearing the cats crying because my wife has locked them out of the bedroom, so they want their mom. They want their mommy.
We're not good enough for them.
Not good enough. Dad, screw you. Uncle Aaron, screw you. We want mom. So that's the thing. If you have a player who is wounded, right, has a limp, would you not expect them? They can't say the word "I run." Like there's a slight expectation of play your character as is. There's when they, especially when something gives them points during character creation, because I've seen people take deranged. Like I encountered this one player who took like I think it was like 4 derangements on top of their Malkavian derangements.
But you're doing that for points to make,
and they were playing none of their actual.
Instead of playing a character that is fleshed out and has all this kind of stuff going on with them, you're playing Dottie McDotface. Okay,
Dottie McDotface.
Okay, because I want dots, or I want Statty McStatface. Whatever system you're playing, whether you have stats or dots. Okay, same thing. It's all the same. You're trying to min max your character creation, and then you look at it and you go like, how are you planning on playing this character? And they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I really wanted to be able to take the thing that gives me like the 12 actions per turn, and I needed enough points at character creation to do that.
Right.
Go back to our episode about changing character creation in that regard. Go back to our episode about maybe we just want to talk about how we're just going to give that to you so you don't have to take all these crappy, things.
And it's so with Malkavians, in particular as a clan, a lot of people portray them as disorganized as a clan comparatively to like the Ventru. The thing is that being someone with mental illness, I've been in groups where we've discussed our mental illness, You know, and here's the funny thing. When I sat around with those people, I saw people. One of the things that brought us, I think, together is that we have a common curse, so to speak. We have a common illness. Think of groups like cancer patients, you know, where they come together to grieve. Sometimes that group togetherness, that common, we are together, you know, whoever sheds blood on this day shall be my brother. You know, it almost brings more of a communal sense to that clan than I think, in my personal opinion, most other clans. If you look at deep dive, and you know, since we're doing a deep dive into the world of darkness, look at Clan Nosferatu. Clan Nosferatu, when they're embraced, become hideous. They become monstrous. Think, you know, bat faces and bat ears.
They get permanent disfigurements.
Yeah,
that make them literally, you know, monsters.
They're not allowed to have appearance.
Yeah,
you know, as a stat, because they're so monstrous to look at. They are a clan that's close knit because we're a clan of monsters.
They are,
and we have to stick together to survive. If you really want to portray a better Malkavian, if you're looking to level up your gaming, it's been a while since we've done a shameless pitch.
It's been a while since we've done the shameless pitch.
Look at Malkavian in another light. You have a people who, you know, whether not willingly or unwillingly, were embraced and given a mental illness, a disease. With that, they're now. I want you to. I'm going to share something very personal. It was very interesting. So my wife and I really love the show Modern Family, and there's an episode where one of the daughters has a bit of a freak out and wants to go see a therapist, right? And after the therapist comes out, she cries. After she comes out of the therapy office, I remember my realization point that I was sick. Mm-hmm. And that it was going to be a long time before I was better. And it's fun. Not funny. It's interesting. As I grew up, I realized this is something that's probably going to be with me the rest of my life. I'm going to have to take these 2 pills morning and night for the rest of my life. It's something I'm going to have to deal with. It's something, you know, that's going to be with me on this journey till I'm in the ground. I wept. I wept in my car. I cried. Because there was the realization that, you know, I'm going to be sick. I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. And, you know, back then I was younger and going to that catastrophic point. But really, you know, it wasn't until I got into therapy with a fantastic doctor. I had a wonderful therapist. That I realized that, yeah, I'm going to be dealing with this for the rest of my life, but you know what? I can be the best that I can be. And I can not only be really normal with my illness, but I can inspire other people to say, you can overcome every day. You know? Okay, I won't say every day, because some days it's going to rain. And some days you're going to have a bad mental health day.
But you can overcome those days.
You can overcome those days. The thing is with Malkavian, imagine a group of people who are now sentenced to this illness.
Forever.
That other groups within Vampire look down upon. They look at them as crazy. And it's interesting because even the authors of the books portray Malkavian as these jesters, because in the stereotypes from other groups, oh, they're all madmen. They're crazy. They're all just jesters and should be ignored, right?
Well, from the concept of the vampire society, the illness does portray you to be the jester. You would think that probably a lot of the people who acted unto the jesters in old society, it kind of bears that. What is the time period I'm looking for here? Of like kings and in the court and the jesters, Dark Ages,
the medieval period.
Vampire is not. although in Modern Knights is very much like, a modern game, but they still sort of have that society.
Yes, that is very true. But I mean, for example, most people don't recognize that mental illness was prevalent even back in the day. Many knights, men at arms, had PTSD, just like we see in modern day. It's nowadays that we just identify and help our soldiers get treatment. And imagine some people get PTSD simply from killing another man from, 100 yards. And they have that's a trauma for them. Imagine stabbing a man through the chest. Definitely can be a traumatic experience. And they had no help, and that's what led them a lot to be violent and have anger outbursts. It was untreated PTSD. And it led them to depression. And that's what I guess I want to get to the core of Malkavian. Because one, I want to address their community. I think that if you really want to level up your gaming, you have their community to be stronger than most. We are together in this house of war. We're going to help each other. We're going to be there for each other. Because although some of you might portray the vampire as, I've lost all humanity, right? And that is something that I cannot stand about vampire, is that they're like, I'm embraced. No, I'm just a predator of the night. I care about no one.
But
it's not. There's a humanity rating for a reason.
Even further from the truth, because all vampires start down the path of humanity, which is...
Unless you're a Sabat.
Yes, that's true. They have their own paths. But you can become a different path, but for the most part, all vampires start down the path of humanity, and all vampires are forever going to remain on the path of humanity. Again, the biggest thing that you have to understand when you play a vampire game, and I missed this huge when I first started to play it, is that vampire is the ultimate long game, okay? Everything takes time. If you have a vampire that's 400 years old, that's 400 years of experience. They didn't build their wealth in 3 nights. They built their wealth over centuries. Okay? They earned their place in the society over centuries. It's a long game. It's a waiting game. If you play fast and loose, okay, and again, you have to start thinking about, it's really tough because when you play a game, you're doing stuff quick and things are happening and consequences are happening. The quicker that you do things in Vampire, the more likely it is that you're going to stand out and people are going to hate you for it.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's what happens within the vampire society as a whole. So in order to lose the humanity and go past the path of humanity, this is a little bit off topic right now, but in order to lose the path of humanity, you probably don't lose your connection to wanting to be human for, I'd say, minimum of a decade.
Well, think about it. You've been a human longer than you've actually been a vampire at that point. Let's say someone's embraced at the age of 30, right? Or hell, even 20s.
So
I've been a human for 20 years. I've woke up, ate, talked to mom and dad on the phone.
If you're playing a brand new vampire, like that was embraced yesterday, guess what? You probably just want to be human. You probably want to connect back with everybody that you knew when you were human, okay? And nobody plays that. Nobody.
I've seen so many people play neonates that were like, I was embraced yesterday. F mom and dad. No, there are people who get... So my wife is dealing with a lot of patients about Christmas. And I can't be together with my family or, yada, yada.
If you look at, again, not the most wonderful series, but it does sort of connect the vampire world, and this kind of like the underbelly, it kind of represents it a little bit better, is True Blood.
True Blood does a great job,
yes,
I think.
True Blood does a very good job of it, and you can see that even the oldest vampires in True Blood want to deeply connect with humans.
Yeah, because otherwise it's the solitary experience, especially in the cutthroat politics of vampire. I can't even fall in love with another vampire because I'm worried they might stake me in my sleep, drink my blood for my generation, unless I'm a lower gen. But then they're the ones worrying about being staked in their sleep and their blood being drained. you know, it's two predators that are trying to literally make a connection, and it's very difficult. You know, look at the relationships between.
Again, we're off topic here, but
no, we're not. Yeah, we are. We're terribly off topic, but these are important things to address. So maybe we should call this like Malkavian, Clan Malkavian, and other things. But there's still a humanity there.
I mean, it fits in the concept of we are talking about how to portray the vampire. You're trying to portray mental illness, but then we're also trying to portray, you know, again, there isn't one way to literally play the vampire trope. I often look at this now as we do this podcast, like, boy, like this is how we used to play vampire. Okay. And we've sort of now in the last 3 years, we've been doing this detective series. We've been playing Mortals. We've been playing like totally off the normal path. We're doing something that's more akin to just using the rules of the system and not the backbone stories that it was built on. But what would a vampire game look like for us today? What would a werewolf game look like for us today? And that's why we're sharing you the perspective here, which is Jared's right. Malkavians spawned out. You're now burdened with a mental illness that you've never had before. And
I'm sorry, it's a terrifying thing. It's a terrifying thing. When I was first diagnosed, it's terrifying. It was like somebody gave me a death sentence. You know what I mean? Granted, I was 18. You catastrophize things. And that's actually something that's part of OCD is catastrophizing. So one of the things that when if you want my, you know, advice of over 20 years, and Malkavian actually was not my forte clan. If everyone's sitting back being like, well, Jared's probably just read the bunk link.
I thought Nosferatu was.
No, Zamashe or Zamisi, however you want to pronounce it.
Well, yeah, I think you like the Sabbat clans, but we'll have to do a whole one on Sabbat versus Camarilla because you basically can't play a Sabbat game. Like, they're way too dark.
Yeah, I would highly recommend any storyteller from playing the Sabbat game. I would be like, no, don't. It's like that would be akin to playing. So in the werewolf system, there is a group called the Black Spiral Dancers. They're the evil werewolves. No. Unless you want a game of immoral turpitude and just filled with the most gross, disgusting things that anyone has ever come up with, don't play that. But that's insanely off topic.
Yes.
So what I would recommend for the Malkavian is shifting your perception from a group of loons that seldom get together. Because, you know, even in the book tends to portray in its illustrations of Malkavian schizophrenia. It's almost always schizophrenia, right? Schizophrenia is a terrifying disease for the people who have it. Imagine that there is a voice in your head that you can't shut off that compels you to do things that you yourself does not want to do. OCD has a component to it that's very akin to that. It's called intrusive thoughts, right? So intrusive thoughts, like I might be, whatever, and I'll get a negative thought about something, and it's very distressing. Now, what OCD is trying to do in that point is literally trying to raise my anxiety, so I will go into my rituals, and do all the things that will calm me down. That's OCD trying to win, and it's really very clever of the disease. So imagine that, and one that you're compelled to follow, one that follows you around that you can't shut off very easily without proper medication and proper therapy. It's terrifying for people who have it, that they're going to listen to the voices. They're going to hear it. They're going to see it. They have visual hallucinations. They have auditory hallucinations because it sounds real. It's terrifying. It's not fun. And there are those, you might see people, homeless persons who have that on the streets talking to themselves. They appear to be talking to themselves. Those people have fallen into the trap of of unfortunately the disease has progressed to such a stage that they can't separate the fiction from the reality. But if you get them in a moment of clarity, if you ever talk to one of these people with schizophrenia, it's terrifying for them when they're in a moment of clarity and they realize, like, oh my God, because they're still people. How am I going to eat tomorrow? How am I going to sleep? Where am I going to sleep? It's so thing. So really, when you look at clan makeup, I recommend you show a stronger clan togetherness. We're here to support each other. We have been damned by our sires, right? Our sires selfishly said, I need this person for X, companionship, their money, your influence over a certain board. Because your sire has megalomania. He needs somebody with a lot of money. So he embraces an investment banker who's very good at stocks.
And now he has afflicted you with
a mental illness. Can you imagine a group who would hate their sires more? You've given me a mental illness, and as a stockbroker, I can't even be awake to perform those stocks for you. I have to be asleep. I get like 60 seconds of trading, except in the winter. Then I'm back on it. But I can't imagine a clan who would hate their sires more, because trust me, there is a time of clarity in all mental illness. There's a time of clarity. There's a time where it's not hitting you as hard, because most mental illness, and I can tell you this based off of years of being in therapy, you're gonna sit back and be like, oh crap, I have this, and it's fear that typically drives us away from getting or lack of opportunity. Most people don't have, and that's something that I'll always scream about. There's not enough funds going to mental health care in this country. But it's so when you think of the organization of the clan, try to bring it together. I would recommend looking them in that light rather than kooky loons, because there's moments of clarity. And I can tell you, as a person with OCD who has gone through therapy and takes medication. Now, granted, medication doesn't work for a vampire. They're dead. Therapy is helpful. And when I went through therapy, my therapy, my doctor didn't even specialize in cognitive behavioral therapy, but he used a lot of those tools. And now I walk around with something I call my toolbox. So when I have a bad OCD day, that's what I call it. I'm just having a bad OCD day. I break out my tools in my toolbox. Some of this is mantras. Some of this is giving it up to God, to be like, all right, God, I need you to take care of me. I'm having a bad OCD day. And there's other tools that I have in my toolbox. Vampires can get therapy. It can happen. It can work. Just because you're dead doesn't mean that you can't gain access to certain tools. Now imagine the vampire psychologist who's like, now you've afflicted me with the very same thing that I used to heal people with, and or heal people from, or help them heal, and now I have it for the rest of my life and I can't even get medication for it. Because there are a lot of diseases that can be affected by, better self-care, better, taking care of oneself, especially some of the less severe. Like if someone had to ask me what level of OCD I have, I would say moderate, because I do require medication every day to manage it. I'm not severe, because there's some people that they've got it way worse than I do. And then there are some people with minor, where they don't need medication to manage. They can simply use tools, and they have a less severe form, just like any disease. There are some people who get it really bad, and some people who don't really, who get it, horrifically. And that's something that you also discuss in building your Malkavian NPC, or when the person is playing a player. To what level of severity do they have this? And that's something too important to discuss. It's very important to discuss. Is your character afflicted with schizophrenia to the point where they're having constant auditory hallucinations, constant visual, hallucinations, and you need to ask, okay, or is it every so often that this, happens. To what level do they control it? To what level can they fight against it? Are you building into your system? Because that's one of the things that I think White Wolf does have a system with, like, ignoring your derangement. I think it's a willpower roll. Are you enforcing that? Are you saying, okay, you're, and because that's one of the things, and I guess that's one of the juicy meat that I want to talk about, is when people tend to play characters with a mental illness, they make the mental illness, they make their character when they have their symptoms, right? When it's out of control. That's what they build. They don't build the person below it. I've seen it time and time again. They're like, okay, this is what my character's like when he's manic. He's crazy, he's fast, he does all this, he loves doing these things, but they don't play it when he has moments of clarity. They don't have that underlying person. This is the
Level Up Your Gaming podcast. This is how you level up your gaming, because now that you have the perspective from Jared, you can understand that it's not all I'm here, I'm manic all the time.
It's not.
It's a wave. If you don't understand that from the perspective, because you don't have mental illness, it becomes hard to see that and say, how do I portray that successfully? You just think, oh, I've got it. It's all the time. It's not.
It's not. It's really not.
It's one of those things where I would actually almost use it as a tool for you as a GM, that if your player is acting too normal too often, that you can be like, remember your...
Well, that's where you as a storyteller introduce, like, you start feeling a rapid pulse. You start having some racing thoughts. What thoughts am I having? You're like, that King's Guard is really looking at you funny. He's looking at you real funny. You think he might be drawing his sword. Is he drawing his sword? And then you have the player act it out. Some of the players, they will take their illness and they won't play it out correctly. And you as the storyteller have to help guide them. One of the things that I beg all of you to do is have the player do the research. Have the player do the research. You do the research. This is leveling up, especially if you're like, oh, we're going to do a vampire game. Malkavian, and this goes for D&D. It goes for any system where there are derangements present. Research it. Respect it. Because there are, and don't have them go perpetual. There's a different type of depression. It's like persistent major depressive disorder, right? Where it's just always on. You're always depressed. And unfortunately, with these very severe cases, a lot of people end up taking their own lives. Notice that it's in a completely different category than depression. People who are depressed can function. They have waves of depression, and it goes on and off. But, in this last moment, I want to take the time, because for me, this is a very special episode to talk about. It's funny that I talk about this in my crippled back state. I encourage any of our listeners out there who may be struggling with mental illness, who might have a friend or a loved one or a family member who might be struggling with mental illness, to understand that mental illness is a part of a person. It is unfortunately a disease that many people struggle with. If they're not getting help, there are so many resources online. They might need your assistance, or you might need assistance in getting assistance or getting help, therapy, seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I can tell any of our listeners the benefits of therapy, the benefits of medication. You're not alone out there. You have this great support network, and you might have to reach out to some of that support network because they might not know what to do. But together as a team, we're always stronger. And I encourage you, if you're struggling with mental illness, to and don't have support just yet, to seek out that support. If you're struggling with mental illness and have got to support, keep it up. The night is always darkest before the dawn. Keep it up. You can do this. And if you know somebody who has mental illness or is struggling with mental illness, be that support network for them. Be there for them, and hold them tight, because sometimes they'll try to pull away.
Very well said.
Hopefully.
Thank you. Anyways, that's gonna wrap us up for this episode. Again, if you want to share your thoughts on the Malkavian, maybe you've played one in the past, maybe you've got some thoughts on just the episode in general, go ahead and let us know. levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. Also, go ahead and review the podcast, subscribe, tell a friend. We are on YouTube as well, so
smash that like button.
Smash it. And that's going to wrap us up for this week. So, for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week, everyone.